Subscribe to my YouTube channel, share it with your friends, and comment your thoughts. The silence stretched between them. Noor stared at the man in the tailored suit, her hands still damp with sweat, her heart racing for a new reason now. "Who are you?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. The man didn't sit. He reached into his coat and pulled out a worn leather wallet. Inside was a photograph, one that stopped her cold. It was the same man from her own photo, the same man with that crooked smile and deep-set eyes, only this photo was newer, much newer. "He's alive?" she asked, breath catching in her throat. The man nodded slowly, and he's been watching from a distance for a long time, nor didn't know what to say. The walls around her, the ones she'd carefully built over years of silence, anger and survival, began to crack. "Why now?" she whispered. "Why today?" The man hesitated. "Because today, the wrong people noticed you." Noor looked down at her hands, calloused from years of hard labor. All she had done was survive, keep her head down, work twice as hard for half the respect. She never asked for this. But something had shifted. That ride, those 10 minutes on Diablo's back had rewritten everything. "I don't understand," she said finally. "You will," the man said. "But not here." He reached into his pocket and handed her a folded piece of paper. She hesitated before opening it. A name, an address, a single sentence scribbled beneath. "They'll come for you tonight. Leave before sunset." Her fingers tightened around the paper. "Who will?" But the man was already walking out. He paused in the doorway and said quietly, "This place is not what it seems, and neither are you." She left the stables at dusk. Not through the front gate, where Mira and her pack still buzzed around like hornets, but through the back alley, the way she always snuck out when she needed to cry without an audience. The wind had picked up. Dust spun into the air like a warning. She had nothing but a small duffel bag, the note and the photo. Her mother's old necklace swung around her neck, a crescent-shaped pendant with initials she'd never understood. She passed the horse pens slowly. Diablo stood near the fence, quiet, watching her. She stopped. Their eyes met again, and for the first time she didn't see a wild animal. She saw recognition, like he'd been waiting for her. Noor reached out, his muzzle pressed against her palm, gently, soft, familiar. "Who are you?" she whispered again, but this time the question was for herself. The bus ride was long and mostly silent. She sat near the back, hood over her head, fingers curled tightly around the crumpled note. She read the address again and again, as if it might vanish if she blinked. When the bus pulled into the sleepy mountain town at the edge of nowhere, the sky was a deep purple. The sun had already sunk behind the trees, and the air smelled like pine and smoke. She followed the directions down a winding dirt road. There was no one else around. Finally, at the top of a hill, she saw it, a cottage, wooden, weather-beaten, with ivy crawling up its sides and a warm orange glow in the windows. She hesitated, then knocked. The door opened before her fist landed. Woman stood there, elderly, white hair twisted into a long braid, eyes sharp as flint. "Noor Rami," the woman said. Not a question. "Yes," Noor replied softly. The woman stepped aside. "Come in. There's much to tell, and not much time." Inside, the walls were lined with old paintings, mostly horses, wild ones, racing across mountains, leaping rivers, locked in battle. A kettle whistled in the background. The woman poured tea without speaking. Then she placed the cup in front of Noor and finally said, "My name is Anara. I knew your father very well." Noor stared at her. "Is he really alive?" Anara nodded. "And in danger, because of who he is, and what you are." Noor's hands trembled slightly. "What do you mean, what I am?" Anara leaned forward, her voice low and steady. "You carry the blood of the wild-born." Noor blinked. "The what?" "Long ago," Anara said, There were riders born with a connection to horses stronger than any human bond. They didn't train horses, they spoke to them, not in words but in instinct, emotion, spirit. Noor shook her head. That sounds like a myth, Anara smiled. Most truths do. She gestured to a painting on the wall, one Noor hadn't noticed before. It showed a young woman, eyes blazing, riding bareback on a midnight horse with flames around its hooves. She was your great-grandmother, the last of the known wild-born. Until today. Noor stood up. This is crazy. I'm just a stable cleaner. I don't have powers. Anara's eyes gleamed. Then explain Diablo. Noor opened her mouth. Closed it again, because she couldn't. Back at the arena, chaos was unfolding. Mira had stormed into the manager's office, shouting, "She just left? No explanation. Are you kidding me?" The manager was pale, sweating. He opened a drawer and pulled out a file. "No, Rami, she doesn't exist in our employee records." Mira stared at him. "What?" "She has no ID on file, no tax records, no emergency contact, no history. It's like she just appeared." Mira's hands clenched.
"Find her."
But someone already had. Across town, in a black car with tinted windows, a man with a scar along his jawline was speaking into a phone. She surfaced. "Just like you said she would." The voice on the other end was low and cold. "Bring her. Indeed, alive, and if she resists," a pause, "then break her first." Back in the cottage, Noor sat by the fire. Her head swam with stories, some unbelievable, some too real to ignore. "She's coming for you," Anara said suddenly. Noor looked up. "Who?" Anara's voice dropped. "Your aunt. She runs the blood arena." Noor frowned. "The what?" "A private circuit. Underground, illegal. Riders battle with half-tamed horses. Some don't make it out alive. It's brutal. And your aunt, she's the reigning queen." Noor's breath caught. "Why does she want me?" "Because you're the heir." Silence. Then Noor whispered, "I didn't ask for any of this." "No," Anara agreed, "but it's in your blood. And now that it's awakened, you'll either face it or be hunted for it." Noor stared into the fire. She remembered her mother's bruised arms, the nights of silence, the day she died whispering, "Never let them find you." But they had. And now, there was no running, only one way left. Fight. That night, she didn't sleep. She watched the stars outside the window and tried to remember everything her mother had hidden from her. And then she made a choice. At dawn, Noor picked up the photograph again. This time she flipped it over. There was a second note under the first, faint, smudged, almost invisible, unless the light hit it just right. "If you find her, tell her I never stopped looking." Ah, her. Fingers curled around it tightly. She would find him, but first she had to survive what was coming and make them regret ever laughing at her. The air was thin and sharp as Noor stepped out of the cottage before sunrise. She wore a borrowed jacket and old riding boots that didn't quite fit. The forest around her was quiet, too quiet. Anara stood behind her with a weathered satchel. "This isn't just about survival now," she said, slipping a folded map into Noor's hand. "It's about identity. They'll test your strength, your mind, and your bloodline." Noor didn't flinch. "Then let them." She didn't feel like the same girl who used to sweep stables, hum lullabies to skittish foals, and cry quietly in storage rooms. That Noor had burned away on Diablo's back. What was left was something raw, unsure, but rising. "Where do I go?" she asked. "To the borderlands," Anara said. "There's someone waiting for you there. He'll train you." Noor raised a brow. "Train me for what?" "To survive your aunt's arena." She journeyed for 2 days on foot, then hitchhiked the final stretch with an old rancher who spoke little and stared a lot. When she asked if he believed in wild-born, he simply spat out the window and said, "They're cursed or chosen, same thing." The borderlands weren't on any map, but she recognized them when they appeared, rolling fields turning into jagged cliffs, fences made from bones and rope, and horses that moved like ghosts under moonlight. She found the man at sunset, leaning against a wooden fence, arms crossed, a cigarette smoldering between his lips. He looked like he'd walked through war and never came back mentally. Scars laced his arms. His eyes were 2 shades too calm. "You're late," he said. "I wasn't aware I had a schedule." "Your enemies did. His name was Kale, a retired blood arena champion, and, according to Anara, the only man who ever beat Noor's aunt in the ring. Why are you helping me?" she asked as he tossed her a helmet. "I owed your father," he said simply, "and I owe your aunt a scar." Training was brutal. It started before dawn, bareback riding through thorny paths, taming horses that had tasted blood, leaping from one moving animal to another with no reins. "No rules in the blood arena," Kyle said one morning. "Only eyes watching. The richer the blood, the higher the bet." She fell. A lot. She bled, often, but every time she hit the ground, she got up faster. "You think your grief is weakness," Kyle said one evening as she sat by a cracked mirror, staring at her bruised shoulder. "It isn't." "No, it's armor." By the end of the second week, she could ride standing up, leap from a galloping stallion onto another, predict a horse's movement by instinct alone. But the worst test wasn't physical. It was Diablo. They brought him in the dead of night, sedated, thrashing even in sleep. His arrival shook the camp. Half the wranglers refused to go near his pen. "He's yours now," Kyle said. "Tame him fully, or you'll never last in the arena." Noor stepped into the pen. The air smelled of sweat, rage, and wildness. Diablo's eyes burned red in the moonlight. She didn't speak, she didn't touch him. She just sat, for hours, watching, breathing, matching his stillness. By dawn, he lowered his head. Kyle said nothing, but for the first time he nodded, just once. She had passed. Meanwhile, far away in a high-rise tower, Mira stood before a conference table filled with elite men and women in suits made from power. "She surfaced," she said, tapping a screen. Noor's face appeared, blurry, mid-gallop, wind slicing across her jaw. "She's in the borderlands." A grey-haired man lit a cigar. "Let her train. Makes the show more interesting." Mira's lips curled into a smile. "She doesn't even know the whole truth." "Good," the woman at the end of the table said. "Let her ride with fire. In her heart. It makes the betrayal hit harder." Noor was asleep when the letter arrived. Kyle tossed it onto her cot. "What's this?" she asked, rubbing her eyes. He didn't look at her. An invitation. The envelope was sealed in blood red. Wax. The symbol on it was unmistakable. 2 horses, one upright, one fallen. The emblem of the blood arena. Noor opened it with steady fingers. "To the heir of Wildblood, your time has come. Ride or fall. 1 week, midnight, location, Ashgate grounds." Kyle met her eyes. "You ready?" Noor folded the letter and tucked it in her jacket. "I was born ready. I just didn't know it." The Ashgate grounds didn't look like any arena Noor had seen. It was ancient, stone walls with fire pits lining the entrances, and underground tunnels that twisted like veins. The audience seats were built into the cliffside, high above the blood-soaked pit where riders would meet their fate. Guards in dark uniforms lined the walls. Wealthy spectators in silk and furs arrived silently, carried in tinted shuttles, sipping wine and trading bets with diamond-studded fingers. Kyle's voice was a whisper at her back. "They don't see you as human. You're entertainment until you win." Her aunt arrived last. She wore a white riding suit with gold trim and a crown of braids. The woman looked like a queen of death. Mira followed behind, her lips twisting when she saw Noor. "Cute. You still look like a stable girl." Noor smiled. "And you still sound like someone who's about to lose money," the crowd gasped. Her aunt stepped forward, and for the first time, Noor saw the family resemblance. The same sharp jawline, same fire eyes. But hers burned with cruelty. "You'll ride last," she said. Against the Reaper, Kyle went rigid. "They want you dead." Noor mounted Diablo without flinching. Then they should have picked a better killer. The first riders fell. Fast, one woman broke her arm in the first 30 seconds. Another was dragged through mud until she didn't move. Each round was bloodier, crueler, louder. Horses screamed, men shouted, wealthy spectators clapped like they were at an opera. By the time Noor's turn came, the air smelled like iron and dust. The gates opened. The Reaper stepped in. He was masked, fully covered in black armor, riding. A beast twice Diablo's size, fangs bared, foam on its lips. Noor felt fear then, not for herself, but for Diablo. He snorted, pawed the ground. She leaned down. "Let's make them believe in legends again." And they charged. The clash was instant. Hooves thundered, teeth flashed. The Reaper's whip cracked toward her face, but Noor ducked, guiding Diablo into a tight spin. Gasps echoed above. She twisted in the saddle, grabbed a rope from Diablo's flank, and lassoed the Reaper's arm just as he tried to strike again. Their horses collided. He swung, she dodged, but the edge of his blade grazed her leg. Warm blood ran down her boot. Noor didn't stop. She leapt onto the Reaper's horse, slashed the strap of his saddle. With a single kick, she sent him tumbling. The arena went still. Then someone screamed, "She did it!" The crowd erupted. Some booed, some cheered, some just stared, stunned. But Noor didn't hear any of them. She dismounted, walked up to her aunt and dropped the reins at her feet. "Your move," she said. Her aunt smiled, cold and sharp. "I underestimated you," she admitted. Then her eyes narrowed. "But this was never about you winning. It was about you remembering." "Remembering what?" Her aunt leaned closer. "That you're not the heir, you're the weapon." Noor's heart froze. Her aunt's words echoed like thunder inside her skull. "You're not the heir. You're the weapon. What does that mean?" Noor whispered. Her aunt's eyes gleamed under the firelit arena lights. "You still think this is about horses? About pride? Child, this is a throne built on blood, and you're just another piece on the board." The crowd had begun to chant her name. "Noor! Noor! Noor!" But their voices felt distant, like a different world. Kyle appeared behind her, tense, alert. "We need to leave. Now." "No," Noor said. "Not until I understand." Her aunt turned toward the crowd, arms raised. "Ladies and gentlemen, our wild girl lives, but let's not forget, blood must answer blood." She clapped twice. From behind the far gate, 2 guards dragged out a limp figure. Noor's breath caught. "Anara!" she screamed. The old woman was bruised, her head bleeding, wrists tied with rough rope. "You trained her," Mira said coldly, stepping beside her. "Mother, you hid her, fed her lies, and now the truth must burn." Noor lunged forward, but Kale pulled her back. "Not here. They want you to break." A horn sounded. The crowd quieted. Anara lifted her head weakly and looked straight at Noor. "You have to remember," she said, voice hoarse. "The papers, the birthmark, the name, Arman." The name struck Noor like lightning. Arman, the man who raised her. The man she'd called uncle, but who had died under mysterious circumstances the day her mother disappeared. "Where is my mother?" Noor cried out. Her aunt didn't flinch. "Ask the graveyard behind my estate." Later that night, Kyle shoved open the back doors of a crumbling chapel where they'd taken refuge just beyond the arena grounds. Noor sat on a wooden bench, arms folded, eyes staring at nothing. Kale paced. "She said you're not the heir, but you have the mark, the bloodline. That doesn't make sense." "Unless I'm not her niece," Noor whispered. Kyle stopped. "What? What if I'm not her sister's daughter? What if I'm her daughter?" He stared. "No, that woman doesn't have a daughter. She's too cold for that. Maybe that's why she hid me." Kyle ran a hand down his face. You're saying she used you like a secret weapon, raised you in silence through Anara and Urban, and planned to unleash you when the time was right. Maybe, or maybe she planned to erase me. But I got loose, Kyle exhaled. This is bigger than horses. You understand that, right? Noor nodded. And I want every piece of the truth. 3 days passed. Whispers of Noor's victory flooded every channel, every elite club, every underground betting room. They called her the Desert Flame. They called her the girl who beat the Reaper. But her heart was heavier than it had ever been. Anara had vanished. The guards claimed they lost track of her after the show. No one believed them. Mira had gone silent, and her aunt. She disappeared from public view, but Noor knew where she would go, the old family estate deep in the hills, where Arman had raised her in a small worker's cottage on the edge of the grounds. I need to go back there, she told Kale. You'll be walking into a trap. I'm done hiding. The estate hadn't changed. Massive iron gates, white stone mansion with golden roofs, stables larger than most homes. But Noor didn't go to the house. She went to the garden behind the western wall. There, under the weeping willow tree, she knelt and dug. Her fingers bled before she found it. An old leather box, sealed with wax, and string. Inside, a photo of a newborn baby, a tattered birth certificate, and a note in Arman's handwriting. If you're reading this, it means the lies didn't win. Your mother wasn't who you think she was, neither is your aunt. And you are the rightful heir. They kept you hidden to protect the bloodline. Your real name is Noor Arman Wildblood. Tears filled her eyes. Her real name. She hadn't known how much she needed it until that moment. Suddenly, footsteps crunched behind her. She turned sharply, hand instinctively on the blade she kept strapped to her calf. It was Mira, holding a pistol. Touching, Mira said, stepping forward. You always like digging up ghosts. What do you want? Noor asked. Justice, Mira said bitterly. You stole my crown. I was never after it. Liar. You came back from the dead, waving your scars like medals. You tried. To kill me, Noor snapped. You beat horses to break them. You tied me to a beast and hoped it would tear me apart. Mira's jaw clenched. Because you were the one everyone loved. Even without a name, even without training, you're just you, and you'll always be someone's shadow, Noor said. Mira raised the gun, but Noor was faster. She ducked, rolled, and flung her blade. It struck Mira's hand. She dropped the gun and screamed. In a flash, Kale appeared behind Mira, pressing her to the ground. You're not worth killing, he growled, but you'll answer for what you did. They tied Mira up and took her to the stables. There, waiting in the shadows, was Noor's aunt. She didn't look surprised. You found the box, she said. Yes. And you still came. I came for answers. Her aunt sat on a hay bale. I didn't kill your mother. She ran. She couldn't take the pressure. She asked Arman to protect you, so I let her go. Then why lie to me? Because if the world knew you were mine, you'd be hunted, feared, worshipped. That power would have ruined you before you grew teeth. Noor narrowed her eyes. Or maybe you were afraid I'd be more than you. Her aunt said nothing. Kyle stepped forward. You used everyone like pawns. Like a true queen must, she said, unflinching. Noor shook her head. You're no queen. She walked over to the central stable, where Diablo stood, calm and alert. She climbed onto his back without a word. Kyle joined her. We're ending this, Noor said. How? With fire. They didn't burn the estate. They burned the old blood arena. That night, under a full moon, Noor stood in the center of the pit where she'd nearly died. Kyle doused the stands with fuel. One by one, Noor struck matches and tossed them into the wood. The flames rose like a phoenix. Crowds gathered on the hills, watching in silence. The empire of cruelty, built on spectacle and fear, crumbled under heat and memory. And Noor, she didn't look back. 3 days later, the newspapers declared her the rightful heir of the Wild Blood legacy. Mira was imprisoned for attempted murder, match-fixing, and animal abuse. Her aunt disappeared again. Some say into exile, others into madness. But Noor didn't chase her. She had a new mission now, a sanctuary, a safe space for horses like Diablo and for girls like her, survivors. Broken things learning how to heal, and she named it the Reclaimed. One morning, a letter arrived. No seal, no sender, just a note inside. You did more than tame the wild. You became it. Armen Noor smiled through tears. She walked out into the paddocks, where Diablo ran with a small group of rescued colts. A little girl stood at the fence, eyes wide. "Is that the horse that saved your life?" she asked. Noor crouched beside her. "No," she said, "he didn't save me. We saved each other." The wind moved gently through the paddocks as the sun rose behind the valley hills. Noor stood on the wooden balcony of the sanctuary, barefoot, wrapped in a blanket, holding a mug of cinnamon tea. Diablo grazed in the distance, calm as ever. The wildness that once terrified people had become a symbol of trust. Below, construction was already underway. Workers hammered new fences into place. Volunteers prepped hay. A group of young girls, most of them quiet, skittish, uncertain, brushed horses with the same nervous energy Noor once had. But today, something different hung in the air. Today marked 1 year since the flames devoured the blood arena. 1 year since Noor had rewritten her name in fire. She walked slowly to the central yard, where a large canvas was set up. Her hand-picked team of trainers, therapists, and journalists had gathered. The press had been invited, not for fame, but for truth. Noor stepped to the podium. She didn't need notes. She looked out at the cameras, at the world. I was supposed to die in that arena. The crowd went still. They tied me to a wild horse to punish me for being born into the wrong truth. I wasn't raised like a princess. I didn't wear gold. I was trained in silence by people who believed in the human heart more than power. She took a breath. And I survived, not because I was strong, but because I remembered who I was. Silence. Then a single clap, then another, and then the crowd stood and roared, not in pity, but in recognition. After the speech, Noor slipped away into the woods behind the sanctuary. Kyle followed her naturally. She could always feel his presence before hearing his footsteps. "They want you to lead the Equine Federation," he said. "I don't want to be a politician." He nodded. "Then what do you want?" She looked at him, tired but clear-eyed. "I want peace," he smiled. "You've earned it." She sighed. Peace doesn't come easily in a world built on war, even if that war was fought with saddles and reins. He stepped closer. "There's a storm coming. Your aunt won't stay hidden forever. There are still people loyal to the old bloodline. They believe you're too soft to lead." Noor turned to him. "Then let them come." He stared at her, really stared, then slowly reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. Noor's heart thudded. "Noor Armen Wildblood," he said, voice steady. "You've faced fire, betrayal, and truth. But I need to ask, can you face something permanent?" He opened the box. Inside was a simple ring. No diamond, no gold, just a carved band with the symbols of wind and flame. Noor laughed, tears stinging her eyes. "I've survived mad horses and family wars, and this is what breaks me," Kyle smiled. "So, is that a yes?" She nodded. "Yes. But I don't want to own you. I want to ride next to you. Always." He took her hand. "Then we build a future. Together." That night, Noor sat alone in the candlelit library, flipping through a journal she found in Anara's old belongings. She still didn't know where Anara had gone. Some said she fled to a monastery in the mountains. Others believed she'd passed, in silence, like a ghost protecting Noor from the shadows. But her words remained. A girl raised by truth will never bow to the lie. Noor closed the book and walked to her room. On the wall was a map, pinned with red dots across the country. Each dot marked a place where girls were reported abused, abandoned, or dismissed in equestrian sports. Each dot was a mission in the months that followed. Noor turned the Reclaimed into a movement. Riders once silenced were now winning championships. Horses once brutalized were now therapy animals. Girls who had once been tied down were now flying across fences, smiling with tears of freedom. Her name was everywhere, not because she wanted it, but because she stood for something the world had forgotten: dignity without titles, strength without cruelty, love without condition. Then, one cold morning, a letter arrived. Just like the last one, unmarked, handwritten. But this time the paper smelled like jasmine and ash. It was from Mira. You think you've won, but every kingdom that rises from fire must answer to ash. You carry a bloodline that demands more than mercy. I will return, not to fight you, but to finish what our mother started. Noor read it 3 times, then burned it. The return came, faster than expected. At the International Equestrian Summit in Vienna, a surprise challenger appeared. A masked rider, black horse, blood-red saddle. Noor recognized the style instantly. Old wild blood training, unforgiving, cold, mechanical. The masked rider dominated every event. Horses obeyed out of fear, not love. The final event, a cross-country course through dense forest, cliffs and water hazards. And the rider's final opponent, Noor. Kyle, tried to stop her. You don't owe them another fight. She shook her head. This isn't about the crowd. This is about legacy. She saddled Diablo herself, whispered to him, let him feel her heartbeat through her palms, and when the horn sounded, she rode like wind, through mud, over cliffs, past danger, until halfway through, she caught up to the masked rider. They rode side by side, and when the rider turned, Noor saw the truth. It wasn't Mira, it was her aunt. Hair grey, eyes burning, face unrecognizable, but soul unchanged. I gave you life, she snarled. No, Noor said. You gave me pain, life. I earned myself. And then at the final jump, her aunt cracked her whip. Her horse panicked, stumbled, fell. Noor dismounted mid-air and slid down the cliff to pull her aunt from the wreckage. You should have left me, her aunt rasped. And become like you? Noor said. No, they airlifted her aunt to the nearest hospital. She never rode again. 6 months later, Noor stood beside Kale in a small courthouse as she signed a final set of papers, her name now official in every corner of the law. Noor Arman Wildblood, the rightful heir, the reformer, the survivor. That evening, under golden twilight, she rode Diablo through the paddocks of the Reclaimed, one last time before their break season. She passed little girls who waved, former victims who now smiled freely, young horses galloping without fear. And as she reached the hilltop, she whispered, I was born broken, raised in silence, tested by fire, but I chose love. She dismounted, placed her hand on Diablo's mane, and turned to Kale. You think we've done enough? He asked. No, she said. We've just begun. And with that she walked into a future she built, not with rage or revenge, but with power, peace, and purpose. The end.